You make $60,000 a year. Your job is stable. You've got a decent title. On paper, you should feel completely secure. But last night, you were awake at 3 a.m., checking your bank account, panicking about tomorrow. So what's really going on here? Why does good money feel like no money? Why is your brain telling you that you're broken financially when the numbers say you should be fine? Here's what neuroscience discovered. My name is Adam, and I spend way too much time thinking about money. Not because I'm obsessed with getting rich, but because I've seen the pattern play out in my own life and in the lives of almost everyone around me. People are making really good money and still living paycheck to paycheck. That's the paradox I want to solve with you. Over the next few episodes in the Money Milestone series, we're going to break down the hidden financial milestones that actually change how you think about money and how you move through the world. Not random numbers, specific thresholds where your psychology shifts and your options expand. If you want to understand why some people feel trapped even with solid incomes and how to break that cycle, hit that subscribe button. And if this resonates with you, drop a like. It helps get this message to more people who need it. Let's get into it. Here's what the problem looks like from the inside. You wake up Thursday morning, your salary hit your account yesterday, let's call it $3,200 after taxes. You felt relief for exactly 4 hours. By the time you got home, reality kicked in. Rent is $1,400. Your car payment is $350. Student loans take $180. Insurance, utilities, groceries, phone bill. By the time you add it all up, you're left with maybe $400 in truly discretionary money for the entire month. $400 to live your life, to actually enjoy any part of it. So you're making strategic micro choices. Is it the coffee or the lunch? Is it the new shirt or the weekend plans? These tiny decisions are taking up mental real estate all day long. And here's the number that matters. 35% of Americans are in this exact situation. They have less than $1,000 in emergency savings. Think about that for a second. More than 1 in 3 people making decent money have basically zero safety net. Now you might be thinking, Adam, that's not me. I usually have a little bit saved up. But here's what you're probably wondering. Is having $3,000 saved actually different from having nothing? Does $5,000 feel fundamentally different from having nothing? The answer is not really, not psychologically. Let me show you what this looks like in real numbers. Marcus makes $58,000 a year. He has $3,200 in his savings account, about enough to cover 1 month of expenses. One unexpected car repair at $1,200, and suddenly he's stressed. A medical bill, an emergency flight to visit a sick family member, a job loss for 2 weeks, any of these wipes out his entire safety net. So, Marcus lives in constant awareness of his fragility. He can't negotiate at work because losing this job would be catastrophic. He can't take the risk on that better position because there's no margin for error. He's making solid money, but his psychology is operating in scarcity mode. So why does this happen? Why does making good money feel like no money? We're told that financial security comes from high income. Get the better job, earn more money, and everything changes. But the reality is much more interesting. Financial security doesn't come from income. It comes from the gap between what you make and what you need. And more specifically, it comes from crossing certain psychological thresholds that change how your brain actually operates. A 2025 study by Vanguard looked at over 12,400 investors and measured their financial well-being. They found something fascinating. Having just $2,000 in emergency savings created a 21% increase in financial well-being compared to having zero. But here's where it gets really interesting. Going from $2,000 to 3 to 6 months of expenses and savings created an additional 13% increase. So the first $2,000 did 62% of the heavy lifting of getting you to optimal financial well-being. But there was still a gap, a still significant emotional shift waiting at that higher threshold. The question becomes, what happens at $10,000 specifically? Behavioral economists led by Harvard researcher Sendo Mullainathan have spent years studying something called the scarcity mindset. And what they discovered is startling. When you feel like you have too little of something, money, time, attention, your brain physically operates differently.
Neuroscientists have found that scarcity literally shrinks your capacity for complex decision-making. It narrows your focus to immediate survival needs. It kills your ability to think strategically about the future, and it makes you significantly worse at negotiation, planning, and long-term thinking. But abundance, even perceived abundance, does the opposite. Let me introduce you to someone. My name is Adam. I'm 28 years old. I work as a marketing manager at a mid-sized tech company. I make $62,000 a year. Here's my actual financial breakdown. After taxes and basic deductions, I bring home about $3,850 per month. My rent is $1,200, my car payment is $280, insurance and utilities run about $250, student loans take $150. That leaves me with roughly $970 for everything else. Groceries, gas, going out, unexpected expenses, savings. For years, I lived like Marcus. I had maybe $2,500 in my savings account. Every month, it would go down, then back up. I was like a human financial yo-yo. I had a decent job, but I felt completely trapped. Then something shifted. I got focused. I cut back on going out. I packed lunches instead of buying them. I took a side project that paid an extra $150 a month. I sold stuff I didn't need on Marketplace. Over about 18 months, I saved $10,200. And then something happened that I didn't expect. I got asked to take on a bigger project at work. It would mean more responsibility, but the pay was the same. In the old version of me, the version with $2,500 in the bank, I would have said yes immediately. I was too scared to ask for anything. But with $10,000 sitting in my account, something switched. I asked my manager if we could talk about compensation. I said, I'm excited about this project and I want to make sure the role is positioned fairly for the responsibility level. My old self would have apologized profusely. New me, I was calm, I was clear. I had already decided that if the answer was no, I could actually afford to look for something else. Let me show you what this looks like.
This is where the psychology comes in. And here's the crucial part. This isn't about being a better negotiator or being a greedier person. A 2019 study published in neuroscience journals used fMRI brain scans to study what happens when you experience scarcity versus abundance. When people were in a scarcity mindset, two specific regions of their brain responded differently. First, their orbital frontal cortex, the part that evaluates value and worth, became hyperactive. You're constantly recalculating whether something is worth the cost. That coffee? Too expensive. That raise request? Too risky. Second, your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for goal-directed decision-making, actually decreased in activity. That's the part of your brain that says, I deserve better. I should ask for what I'm worth. So when you're living in scarcity, your brain literally can't access the neural capacity to negotiate effectively. You feel it as anxiety. You rationalize it as humility. But what's actually happening is your brain has redirected resources to keep you safe, to keep you from taking risks. The concept is called scarcity mindset, and it's one of the most predictive factors of whether someone will accept whatever deal is offered versus whether they'll actually advocate for themselves. And here's the beautiful part. The research also shows what happens when you cross a threshold and move into perceived abundance. Within days of having $10,000 in the bank, people report feeling different. The stress doesn't disappear, but the quality of stress changes. You go from, if something bad happens, I'm destroyed, to, if something bad happens, I have options. That shift from destroyed to options is massive. It rewires your confidence. It changes your posture in conversations. And here's what research has proven. It increases your negotiation confidence by a measurable amount. Research showing up to 300% higher confidence when you have walking away money. That's not me being dramatic. That's the actual finding. People with emergency funds negotiate differently because they can walk away. And the moment a negotiating partner knows you can actually walk away, the entire dynamic of the conversation shifts. But here's where everything changed for me. I asked for more money for that project.
I didn't beg, I didn't apologize, I just explained why the responsibility and title change deserved compensation adjustment. My manager said they'd think about it. 2 days later, she came back and said yes, a $4,200 annual increase. That's $350 a month more. It wasn't the full amount I asked for, but it was enough. Now, you might be wondering if that would have happened anyway. Maybe she was always planning to give me a raise. But I don't think so. In retrospect, I realized something crucial. My confidence was the only thing that changed. Before $10,000, when I talked to my manager, I was managing her emotions. I was softening my ask so she wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I was saying things like, I know money is tight, but maybe... I was negotiating down before she had a chance to push back. After $10,000, when I talked to my manager, I was stating facts. I had the mental space to think about my value, not just my survival. And research from organizations studying negotiation behavior confirms this pattern. Think about that for a second. The money in my bank account didn't change the objective facts. It changed my brain's ability to think clearly about those facts. Now that you understand the psychology, let's talk about what this actually looks like in different scenarios. Let's say you make $50,000 a year. You've been in your role for 2 years. You're competent, you show up, you do your job. Salary bands for your role typically range from $48K to $58K. Without emergency savings, here's your internal conversation. I should ask for a raise. I deserve it. But what if they say no? What if they take it the wrong way? What if it costs me the job? I have $1,200 in savings. I cannot afford to rock the boat. I'll just be grateful I have a job and wait for the next review. With $10,000 in the bank, here's your internal conversation. I should ask for a raise. I've been here 2 years. My market value is around 53 to 55K. I can walk into that conversation and name a number. If they say no, I have options. I can look elsewhere. I have runway. These aren't different people. These are the same person with a different psychological operating system. Here's another scenario. You work in a corporate environment and they offer you a position in a new city. It's a promotion in title, but they offer the same salary you make now. It's a 1-year contract. Without emergency savings, this is amazing. It's a promotion. I should say yes immediately before they change their mind. New city is scary, but a promotion is a promotion. Yes, absolutely yes. With $10,000 in the bank, this is interesting, but the compensation doesn't reflect the promotion and the relocation costs. Can we talk about base salary and what does the role look like after year 1? If you can't offer more upfront, what about more flexibility? What if this doesn't work out? What's the severance? Suddenly, you're not just saying yes to an offer. You're actually negotiating terms because you've created psychological space to do so. And here's the concrete outcome that research documents. According to a 2023 study on workplace negotiation, men initiate salary negotiations about 21% of the time. Women initiate about 12%. But when people have adequate emergency savings, their negotiation initiation rate jumps significantly. The difference isn't gender. The difference is confidence, and confidence is rooted in resources. Now let's talk about the specific number. Why $10,000 specifically? Why not $5,000 or $15,000? $10,000 for someone making $62,000 a year is approximately 2.9 months of expenses. It's not a full 6 months. It's not the ideal emergency fund. But psychologically, it's a number where something crystallizes. It's big enough that you can't touch it on impulse. It's big enough that you think, okay, I actually have something here. It's big enough that if you get fired, you have runway to find something else without immediately panic selling your car. But it's not so large that it feels impossible for someone making $50,000 to $80,000 a year. It's the Goldilocks number. It's just right for the psychological shift.
So what do you actually do about this? First, you acknowledge something. You're not broke because you're irresponsible. You're potentially broke because your brain is running a scarcity operating system that makes good decision-making nearly impossible. That's not a character flaw. That's neuroscience. Second, you commit to $10,000, not because it's the perfect number, but because hitting it is psychologically transformative. Make it visual, track it, make it real. Here's how I did it. I opened a separate high-yield savings account, literally a different account at a different bank, so I wouldn't be tempted to touch it. I set up an automatic transfer of $180 per week into that account. That's $720 a month. Over about 14 months, it became $10,000. For you, the number might be different. If you make less, maybe you're saving $400 to $500 a month. Maybe it takes 20 months. But the timeline matters less than the destination. And here's what's critical. As you approach that $10,000 number, pay attention to how you feel. Your internal dialogue will shift. Your confidence in work conversations will change. You'll notice yourself making clearer decisions. You might even find yourself naturally asking for things you've been avoiding. These aren't magical. They're neurological. You're crossing a threshold where your brain can access better decision-making capacity. The third piece is this. Once you hit $10,000, you immediately leverage it. You ask for the raise you've been avoiding. You negotiate the offer instead of taking the first number. You have the conversation you've been too scared to have. What if you did this and it didn't work out? What if you asked and they said no? Then you're in a completely different position than you would have been. You know you have options. You can interview elsewhere. You can take a small contract job. You have actual walking away money. That changes everything about how you negotiate. And the research is crystal clear on this. People who believe they have alternatives negotiate better outcomes. Here's the bottom line. The amount of money you have in the bank is not really about safety. It's about what that money does to your brain. $10,000 isn't a random number. It's a psychological threshold where you shift from surviving to strategizing, where your brain stops running a scarcity program and starts running an abundance program, where you can finally think clearly about your own worth. That's why everything changes after you save $10,000. Now, in the next episode of the Money Milestone series, we're diving into the $20,000 rule, when money finally feels real. We're going to explore what happens at the next threshold and how it changes not just your career, but your entire relationship with work and risk. If this video resonated with you, if you felt that pang of recognition about living paycheck to paycheck, even with decent income, you know what to do. Subscribe, hit that like button, and in the comments tell me, where are you at right now? How much do you have saved? Because the people in this community are real, and they're figuring this out together. Your brain is about to change your life. The question is just whether you're going to make it to that threshold where it actually gets the chance to. See you next episode.